The penthouse was silent. Han Min-jae stood in his kitchen at 5 a.m., staring at an empty counter where his breakfast should have been. For 3 years, every single morning, Amara Okafor had been there. The tea brewing, the rice steaming, her quiet efficiency moving through his home like clockwork. But today, nothing. No sound, no warmth, no Amara. In his world, when someone reliable suddenly vanishes, it only means one thing: something terrible has happened. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. This story is going to leave you speechless. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will change how you see loyalty, protection, and revenge forever. Han Min-jae didn't become the head of Seoul's most feared organized crime family by ignoring his instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming. He pulled out his phone, dialed Amara's number. It rang once, twice, then voicemail. Her voice, professional and warm, asked him to leave a message. He hung up, tried again, voicemail. His jaw clenched. He pressed the intercom to his security station downstairs. "Has anyone seen Amara Okafor this morning?" There was a pause. Then Kim Tae-sung, his head of security, responded. "No, sir. She hasn't checked in at the service entrance. We thought perhaps she called in sick." She didn't call. Han's voice dropped to something cold, something his men recognized as dangerous. "Pull her address from the employee files, now." "Sir, she lives in Itaewon, the old district near—" "I know where Itaewon is. Have my car ready in 5 minutes." "Boss, I can send men to check on her. You don't need to—" "5 minutes." The line went dead. Han Min-jae had not driven himself anywhere in 3 years. He had not visited any neighborhood below the gleaming towers of Gangnam, where power and money lived. He had not concerned himself with the personal lives of his staff. But Amara's absence felt wrong. She had never missed a day, not when she had the flu and he had to physically send her home, not when the subway flooded and she walked through a storm to arrive on time, not even when her father passed away in Lagos and she still showed up the next morning, eyes red but hands steady, preparing his breakfast before flying home for the funeral. She was the most reliable person in his entire organization, more dependable than his lieutenants, more consistent than his accountants, more loyal than men who had sworn blood oaths to his family. The building in Itaewon was worse than he imagined. Crumbling concrete, rust stains running down the walls, a security gate hanging off broken hinges. Han felt anger rising in his chest. He paid Amara well. Why was she living in a place like this? What he didn't know was that she sent most of her salary home to Nigeria. Her mother's medical bills, her younger sister's university fees, her brother who needed surgery. Amara lived on almost nothing, sacrificing in silence while keeping his penthouse immaculate. Apartment 3C, second floor, no elevator. Han climbed the stairs, his expensive Italian shoes echoing against concrete stained with years of neglect. The smell of old cooking oil and dampness hung in the air. This was a world he had clawed his way out of as a teenager, a world he swore never to return to. Then he heard it. Shouting, a man's voice, ugly with rage, coming from behind a door at the end of the hallway. And beneath it, something that made his blood turn to ice. A woman crying. Amara's voice. Han didn't knock. His foot connected with the door just below the lock. The cheap wood exploded inward, the frame splintering, pieces of the lock mechanism scattering across a tiny living room with secondhand furniture and photographs on the walls. The scene inside made time stop. Amara was on the floor, curled into a protective ball, her arms raised to shield her face. Her hair, usually pulled back into a neat bun, was wild around her shoulders. Blood ran from her split lip. One eye was swollen completely shut, the skin around it already turning purple and black. Her white shirt was torn at the collar. Bandages on her arms, old bandages from previous wounds, wounds Han had never known existed. Standing over her was a man, late 20s, tank top stretched over muscles. His fist was raised, ready to strike again. His name was Marcus Chen, and he thought he owned her. For one eternal second, the three of them were frozen. Then Amara looked up. She saw Han standing in the doorway, and her eyes, those calm, steady eyes that had greeted him every morning for 3 years, filled with something he had never seen before. Terror. Not of Marcus, of Han seeing her like this, broken, vulnerable, human. That look shattered something inside Han Min-jae that he didn't know still existed. Marcus's survival instincts kicked in before his brain could catch up. He saw the tattoos crawling up Han's neck, partially visible above his black shirt collar, saw death standing in his doorway wearing designer clothes and custom shoes. He ran. Marcus scrambled across the room and threw himself through the window onto the fire escape. The sound of his footsteps clanging down metal stairs faded into the morning. Han let him go, not because he was merciful, because right now only one thing mattered. He crossed the room and dropped to his knees beside Amara. "I've got you." His voice, usually cold and commanding, came out barely above a whisper. Amara tried to speak, tried to say she was sorry, that she would come to work immediately, that she just needed a moment. The words came out broken and weak, interrupted by pain. "Don't speak," Han said quietly. "Just breathe." He scooped her into his arms like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest with a gentleness that would have shocked anyone in his organization. She tried to protest, tried to say she could walk, but her body was trembling, going into shock. He carried her down 2 flights of stairs, past neighbors who peered through cracked doors, then quickly looked away. In neighborhoods like this, you didn't see anything. You didn't remember faces, especially not the face of a man with tattoos on his neck and death in his eyes. His black Genesis G90 waited at the curb, engine running. Han placed Amara in the back seat as carefully as if she were made of glass, then slid in beside her. He pulled her head onto his lap, his hand resting protectively over her hair. "Drive," he told the guard behind the wheel. "Now." The ride to Gangnam took 15 minutes. Amara drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing shallow, her body trembling. Han watched her face, the split lip, the swollen eye, the bruises forming like storm clouds across her brown skin. Each mark was a debt, each wound was a promise. Marcus Chen would pay for all of it. The private doctor was waiting when they arrived. Dr. Park had served Han's organization for 12 years, asking no questions, keeping no records, treating bullet wounds and knife cuts without ever contacting authorities. He examined Amara with professional efficiency, while Han stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching every movement. 2 cracked ribs, Dr. Park said, his voice clinical. Severe contusions across her back and shoulders, possible concussion, signs of repeated trauma over time. This wasn't the first incident. Han's hands curled into fists. She needs rest, monitoring, ice for the swelling, pain medication. "No hospital," Han said. It wasn't a request. "Understood. She can stay here. I'll check on her every 6 hours." They put her in Han's bedroom, the master suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's skyline, silk sheets, a bed large enough for 4 people. Amara looked impossibly small in the center of it, fragile, lost in a sea of luxury she had cleaned 1,000 times but never inhabited. Han pulled a chair beside the bed and sat. He didn't move for 4 hours.
He watched her breathe, watched her face twitch in troubled sleep, watched the rise and fall of her chest beneath the blanket, counting each breath like a prayer.
At some point, her hand slipped from under the covers. Bandaged fingers, swollen knuckles, evidence of how hard she had tried to defend herself before Han arrived. He reached out and took her hand in his. Her skin was warm against his calloused palm. "I will find him," Han whispered, his voice barely audible, "and I will make him feel everything he did to you. This I swear on my family's name." Outside the window, Seoul glittered in the afternoon sun. Han Min-jae did not sleep. He made phone calls, quiet conversations in Korean with men who operated in shadows, who found people who didn't want to be found. When Amara woke 16 hours later, the first thing she saw was Han, still in the same chair, still watching her with an intensity she had never experienced before. "Mr. Han," she whispered, her voice hoarse. She tried to sit up, gasped at the pain in her ribs, clutched her side. "I'm so sorry. I should have called. I'll make your breakfast right now. I'll—" "Stop." The single word froze her. Han leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his dark eyes holding hers. "You will not apologize. You will not make breakfast. You will not return to that apartment." His voice was calm, but beneath it ran something molten, something dangerous. "Ever." Amara's eyes filled with tears. She had been fighting since Marcus's first punch 6 months ago, pretending everything was fine, hiding the bruises under long sleeves, applying makeup to cover the marks, showing up to work early so no one would see her limp. "Am I fired?" Something flickered across Han's face. Pain, anger, something she couldn't name. "You are not fired." He stood slowly, towering over her, but somehow making himself less threatening, keeping his distance. "You are under my protection now. No one will touch you again. No one will hurt you again. This is my word." A knock at the door interrupted them. A young man entered, tall, lean, with kind eyes that softened when he saw Amara's injuries. She recognized him vaguely. Lee Jae-hyun, one of Han's most trusted men, always polite when he visited the penthouse. "Jae-hyun will guard this room while I'm gone. Anything you need, he provides. You don't leave this penthouse, not until I say it's safe." "Where are you going?" The question escaped before Amara could stop it. Han paused at the threshold. He didn't turn around. "To handle business." Then he was gone. 30 minutes later, Han descended into the basement of a restaurant in Gangnam that hadn't served food in 20 years. The room was filled with men who lived in shadows, informants, enforcers, hunters who tracked people across continents if necessary. Han stood before them, his presence commanding instant silence. Marcus Chen, late 20s. Last seen fleeing an apartment in Itaewon this morning. His voice was ice wrapped in silk. "He put his hands on a woman under my protection. I want him found." One of the hunters shifted. "Dead or alive, boss?" Han's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides, the tattoos across his knuckles flexing. "Alive." The word dripped with dark promise. "I want him breathing when you bring him to me. What happens after that is between him and me." The men nodded and dispersed. They had 48 hours. Marcus Chen made it 31 hours. He thought he was smart, ditched his phone, withdrew cash from 3 different ATMs, bought a bus ticket to Busan using a fake name, kept his hood up, his head down, avoided cameras. He thought he could disappear into South Korea's crowds, become nobody, start over somewhere Han's reach couldn't extend. He was wrong. Han's hunters found him at Seoul Express bus terminal, trying to board the 2 a.m. bus to Busan. They moved fast, professional.
One moment, Marcus was clutching his ticket. The next, he was in the back of a van with a bag over his head, his screams muffled, his threats ignored. The room they brought him to was cold. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, walls that had witnessed confessions and endings for decades. Marcus was strapped to a chair when Han arrived. The boss descended the stairs slowly, each footstep echoing. He wore a white dress shirt this time, sleeves crisp, collar perfect. He looked like a businessman arriving for a meeting. He didn't speak. Marcus started talking immediately, excuses pouring out like sewage. "He's my girlfriend, man. We had a fight. Couples fight, it's none of your business what happens between—" Han rolled up his sleeves, methodically, precisely. The tattoos on his forearms caught the light, dragons and symbols and names of men who had crossed him and paid the price. Still, he said nothing. The first punch broke Marcus's nose. Blood sprayed across the concrete. The second cracked 2 ribs, the exact same ribs Marcus had cracked on Amara. Han worked in silence. No questions, no demands for apology. This wasn't an interrogation. This was education. Every blow was measured, calculated to inflict maximum pain without allowing unconsciousness. Marcus needed to feel all of it. Every bit of pain he had inflicted on Amara, multiplied. "Please," Marcus sobbed between strikes. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll never touch her again. I swear. I'll leave Korea. You'll never see me again." Han paused. His knuckles were split. Blood, both his and Marcus's, dripped onto the floor. He leaned close to Marcus's ruined face. "You're right," Han whispered. "You won't."
The punishment continued for another hour. When Han finally climbed the stairs, his white shirt was stained crimson. His face was expressionless. His hands trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from the effort of stopping himself from going further. Marcus was still breathing, barely, broken but alive, as promised. 3 weeks passed. Amara's bruises faded from purple to yellow to nothing. Her ribs healed. The swelling around her eye disappeared, revealing the steady gaze Han had grown accustomed to. But something else was changing, something neither of them expected. She started cooking again, not because Han asked, not because she felt obligated, but because one morning she woke before dawn and felt the pull of routine, the comfort of creating something for someone who had saved her life. Han found her in the kitchen at 5:30 a.m., moving through cabinets she knew better than her own apartment, preparing breakfast she had made 1,000 times before. "You should be resting," he said from the doorway. Amara didn't startle. She had heard him coming. "I wanted to," she said simply, turning to look at him. "For you." They ate together that morning, Han at the head of his massive dining table, Amara sitting beside him instead of serving and disappearing like before. She told him about growing up in Lagos, about her family's struggles, about why she came to Korea 5 years ago, chasing opportunity and hope, about sending every spare won home and living in that terrible apartment because her family's needs came first. Han listened, really listened, and something inside his chest that had been frozen for 20 years began to thaw. This became their ritual, morning meals shared in comfortable silence or quiet conversation. Han discovered that Amara laughed easily when she wasn't afraid, that she hummed old Nigerian songs while she cooked, that she dreamed of opening a small restaurant someday, serving her mother's recipes to Seoul's international community. He also discovered jealousy. It happened slowly, then all at once. He would come home to find Amara in the garden with Jae-hyun, their heads bent together in easy conversation, her laughter floating through the windows, bright, unguarded, a sound Han realized he had never drawn from her himself. When he entered a room, that lightness vanished. Her shoulders would straighten. Her smile would become polite, professional. The warmth would retreat behind something careful and controlled. She was grateful to him. She respected him, but she still feared what he represented: the violence, the power, the blood on his hands. Jae-hyun was different. Jae-hyun was safe. Jae-hyun didn't carry the weight of bodies and broken bones in his past. Han watched them from his office window one afternoon. Amara laughing at something Jae-hyun said, touching his arm with casual affection, her smile genuine and free. The jealousy burned, but beneath it was something worse: understanding. Han Min-jae had built an empire on fear and respect. He had clawed his way from poverty to power through violence and intelligence. He commanded hundreds of men. Politicians and police commissioners answered his calls. He could snap his fingers and destroy lives, end careers, erase problems. But he couldn't make Amara look at him the way she looked at Jae-hyun. He couldn't draw that unguarded laughter from her lips. He couldn't be the person who made her feel safe instead of protected. There was a difference, and he was finally understanding it. 2 months after the incident, Han made his decision. He called Amara to his office one evening. She came immediately, that old nervousness creeping back into her movements. "Sit," he said gently, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. She sat, hands folded in her lap, waiting. Han pulled an envelope from his drawer. Inside was a bank statement, her name, a number that made her eyes go wide. "What is this?" "Compensation," Han said, "for everything you endured, for 3 years of loyal service, for suffering that happened because I didn't know and didn't protect you soon enough." Tears welled in Amara's eyes. "Mr. Han, this is too much. I can't." "You can." His voice was firm. "And you will. Your mother's medical bills are paid. Your sister's university fees for the next 4 years are covered. Your brother's surgery is scheduled for next month at Seoul National University Hospital, the best surgeons in Korea." Amara's hand went to her mouth. "How did you—" "I made it my business to know." He paused. "There's more." He pushed another document across the desk. A deed, an apartment in Honnam-dong, one of Seoul's most prestigious neighborhoods. 3 bedrooms, modern kitchen, security, safety. "This is yours. No rent, no strings. It's in your name." "I don't understand," Amara whispered. "You're free, Amara." Han's voice was soft, softer than she had ever heard it. "You don't work for me anymore. You don't owe me anything. You can stay in Korea, or you can go home to Nigeria with enough money to never worry again. The choice is yours." "But I don't want to leave," she said quickly. "I want to stay. I want to work for you. I want—" "To live your life without fear, without obligation, without feeling like you owe someone your freedom because they saved you once." Amara stared at him. "Is this because of Jae-hyun?" Han almost smiled. Almost. "This is because you deserve to choose your own path. And if that path leads to him, then I'm happy for you both. He's a good man, better than me in the ways that matter."
"That's not true," Amara said, her voice fierce. "You saved my life. You protected me. You gave me everything." "I gave you safety," Han corrected, "but Jae-hyun gives you something I never could. Peace, the ability to breathe without fear, to laugh without wondering if the man across from you has blood on his hands." He stood, walked to the window, looked out over Seoul's glittering skyline. "I would rather see you happy with him than grateful to me. Gratitude isn't love, Amara, and you deserve love." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Amara stood, walked around the desk, and did something that surprised them both. She hugged him, brief, warm, genuine. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for seeing me as more than someone who cleans your home, for caring enough to let me go." Han stood rigid for a moment, then slowly, carefully, he returned the embrace. When she pulled away, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. 6 months later, Han Min-jae stood in the back of a small church in Itaewon, watching Amara Okafor walk down the aisle in a white dress, her smile radiant, her hand in her father's as he gave her away. Jae-hyun waited at the altar, his eyes shining with tears, with joy, with a future Han had made possible by stepping aside. Han didn't stay for the reception. He slipped out quietly, back to his Genesis, back to the shadows where he belonged. But as he drove through Seoul's streets, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 20 years. Peace. Not happiness, but peace.
He had given Amara what she truly needed. Not possession, not control, not debt. Freedom. The freedom to choose her own life, her own love, her own future. And in doing so, Han Min-jae had proven something to himself. That even men built from violence and blood could still choose mercy. Could still choose to protect without owning. Could still care without consuming. Some battles couldn't be won with force. Some victories looked like walking away. And sometimes the greatest act of power was knowing when to let go. Marcus Chen spent the next 5 years in prison. His bones healed wrong. He walked with a permanent limp. His hands never regained full mobility. But he was alive, breathing, existing with the knowledge that Han Min-jae could have erased him from the world, but chose mercy instead. That mercy was its own kind of punishment, a reminder every day that he had been spared by a man more powerful than he could comprehend. Amara and Jae-hyun opened a small restaurant 2 years after their wedding, Nigerian-Korean fusion cuisine. It became one of Seoul's most beloved hidden gems, featured in magazines, celebrated by food critics. Amara's mother visited from Lagos, tears in her eyes as she tasted her daughter's success. Han visited once, sat in a corner booth, ordered the house special, left a generous tip and a note that simply said, "Proud of you." He never came back, not because he didn't care, because his presence would always carry shadows, and Amara deserved to live in the light. This story proves something important. Power isn't about control. It's about knowing when to use it and when to set it down. True strength isn't domination. It's protection without possession. It's caring enough to let someone go so they can truly be free. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Comment below if you believe Han made the right choice. Share this with someone who needs to know that love sometimes means stepping back instead of holding on. And remember, the people who change our lives aren't always the ones who stay. Sometimes they're the ones brave enough to let us go. Thanks for watching.